Let's see how to connect ChatGPT to your Discord bot using no coding with Bot Studio for Discord. Okay, so to set this up in Bot Studio for Discord, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to go ahead and add a new command. You can name this whatever you want, but I'm just going to call it GPT. So when our users do exclamation GPT, that's how they're going to call this command. And then the first response that we're going to need here is a variable. So we're going to store a value in variable, and we can call that get input. And the idea with this is that the user is going to type exclamation GPT, and then they're going to follow that with their prompt. So we want to actually capture the prompt that the user has input. So let's just call this GPT input. And then this is a text parameter, and then we're going to enter parameter 0. You can read about that here, but essentially this means 0 means that we're going to take everything after the command. So that'll save the whole prompt to a variable called GPT input. Now we can add one more response here, external category, and then the call API response. So this is actually the node that's going to make the call to OpenAI. So we'll connect that with the trigger here. And then you can see we get two options here. So we have one if the call succeeds and one if the call fails. So let's go ahead and open this. First field here is simply the API URL. So in our case, we're calling the OpenAPI endpoint. And that's the responses endpoint. And then this is a post method. We also need to copy in our bearer token. I'm going to leave that until after the recording is over, because you don't want to share your token with anybody else. Otherwise, they'd be able to call the API on your usage, and you would get charged for that. So the request body here, let's expand this so we can see it a bit more. This is coming from the OpenAPI documentation, but you can just follow along here. We're specifying which model we want. This is all JSON, by the way, the request body. So the first field is the model, and we're saying GPT 4.1. And then the next field that we need here is the input. So this is basically the prompt. And then we're going to go ahead and insert a variable here. And this is where we're going to choose that GPT input. So what we're saying with this is that we want the input, aka the prompt, to basically be whatever the user said after they typed GPT. And then we also can store the response from the API into a variable name. And this is how we're going to send this response in a message back to the user. So let's call it GPT response to make things easy for ourselves. And then, like I said, the bearer token, you'll get this from the OpenAPI developer site. You need to put a minimum of $5 into your account before you'll be able to use the API. But for the time being, I'm just going to put bearer here, and then I'm going to come back when I'm not recording and put in my real bearer token so you can't see it. So then we can save that node, and then the last thing we need is basically a send message node. And what we're doing with this is we are sending a message with the response from the bot back to the server. So we're going to go into message variables, and then we're looking at command channel and the command channel ID. So we're specifying that we want to send this response to whatever channel that the user sent the prompt in. And then for the response message text, bear with me a little bit on this one. We can go ahead and reference our GPT response. So this is what we stored as a variable, and this is what's coming back from the OpenAPI, the OpenAI API. And then we can, so this is, if you just sent this would be an entire JSON object. So the response comes back with like a status code, things like that. That's not really relevant to the user, that sort of metadata stuff. So in order to access the response, like the text response to our prompt, we're going to do .output 0, .content 0.text. So if you're not familiar with programming, this might look a little foreign to you, but essentially we're indexing into this JSON object and we're saying we want the first entry in the output array, and then from inside of that we want the first entry of the content array, and then we're looking at the text field. So let's go ahead and save that, and then we can run our bot and see what it's doing. Okay, so now our bot is running and we're going to test this out. So I'm going to do GPT, since that's the command we set up, and then I'm going to ask it, what's the coolest neighborhood in Tokyo? And you'll notice that I'm prompting it to answer in 3 sentences or less. So a lot of times, obviously ChatGPT is really wordy. Your Discord bot has a built-in limit. This is a Discord rule of 2,000 characters when it sends a message. So you want to make sure that you're prompting it in a way that it's going to respond in 2,000 characters or less. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So we send the message and we ask, what's the coolest neighborhood in Tokyo? And then we can see it makes a call to the OpenAI API, and then it comes back and it's telling us that Shimokitazawa is Tokyo's coolest neighborhood. Obviously, you can ask it anything you want. You now have ChatGPT powering your bot, courtesy of Bot Studio for Discord, and you can really do anything from there.